and we shout it from the rooftop, but folks don't realize how big of a bite Uncle Sam wants to take out of their retirement. And what's really important here is creating an order of operations for your cash flow. What needs to be funded first? What needs to be funded second? And most folks, their plan is just to do whatever they feel. They go with their gut. It's a tool. We don't want everything in one basket, but we want to understand them. All right, so in today's video, we're going to cover the things that you've got to do if you have $750,000 saved and you're only 58. What can you do to retire as soon as possible and as comfortably as possible?
Yep. So I'm 59. So this
it's
is
too late for Todd, but if you're 58, there's hope for you.
This is very pertinent to me. So yeah, let's talk about some things that if you're my age, if you graduated high school in 1984, born in the mid 60s, this is for you, man.
And this is crunch time
okay.
too. This is crunch time, but I don't want you to think that it's too late. We've analyzed hundreds, if not thousands, of retirement plans and helped dozens and dozens of people that are around that age, around that asset level, get to and through that retirement gap. So we're going to talk about some of the things to consider. What are the moves that you need to make, as soon as possible, and how do you approach this so that you don't have the ostrich head in the sand thing and we don't miss our opportunity.
But there's a proven framework that will work for these people. So
we're going to share that framework with you. Let's do it.
Okay. So we get to the point of this conversation that everybody hates, and I hate it, and everybody hates it.
We're going to say the B word.
We try not to use the B word. We use what do you call it?
I like spending plan.
A spending plan.
Budget is the B word. Sorry, we had to have you on the edge of your seat there a little bit.
So, and I know you get to this age, and there are probably a lot of areas that you could probably cut back on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at your refrigerator, look at your cars, look around and say, honestly, there's probably something we could cut back that might hurt a little, but it can make huge dividends later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, creating a spending plan or a budget. We said the B word. Sorry, disclaimer. Creating a spending plan for retirement and for right before retirement, it's not a ton of fun for most people, but oh my gosh, is it important? I mean, this is like putting your seatbelt on, it's a little uncomfortable, but if you don't do it, the effects are going to be a whole lot worse if you have a problem. And so really the main things you got to think about is what are your needs and what are your wants? I like to simplify it into this. What do you have to spend to keep stuff moving? What's your bottom line? What's your baseline nut, as they say? Maybe that's $50,000 a year. Okay, great. And then what are the wants? Maybe that's another $20,000. Maybe it's another $70,000. Everyone's situation is different. You've got to figure out what your specific situation is and can you fund it? And retirement really is that simple. Is how much do you spend? Do you have enough income to cover it? Now, there's a whole lot of problems and landmines along the way to get there, right? But this is the time to be working on your spending plan because you don't have to be retired right now. Hopefully there's not a layoff or something, right? But you've got a couple of years, and so this is where you get to hone it in. Now, one of the things that most people miss, and they're concerned about it, but what they miss is how expensive healthcare is going to be.
Yeah. Our link, I think, talks about a retired couple needs between $184,000 and $383,000 to cover most medical costs.
That's probably not including long-term care.
I would say that's not. Yeah.
Realistically. And so, this is a challenge in our system right now. And it's not going to go away. And so, you can hope that it works, or you can make a plan to be able to fund that, because there are things that we can't control. But what you don't want is an unexpected health expense derailing the rest of your retirement, which is just not something that we need. And so, planning to be able to cover those expenses, those big what ifs, and the way that you do it is you figure out currently under your current health plan, what's your premiums, what are your max out of pockets? Let's carve that money out. That's what it's earmarked for. And in the future, when you hit Medicare age, planning to, what supplement you're going to take or what plan you're going to take can help you to keep a little bit of that budget every single year. But if you have that money set aside to be able to cover those expenses, you likely won't have to touch other retirement assets and sell those at a price that you don't like. So we need to plan for that. That's a big one that people overlook. Taxes is one that people really overlook, and we shout it from the rooftop, but folks don't realize how big of a bite Uncle Sam wants to take out of their retirement. It could be 30-40% of your retirement by the end of the day, because we've got tax on your Social Security, we've got tax on your IRAs, potentially capital gains if you have brokerage accounts. We've got Medicare surcharges, IRMA. We've got the net investment income tax. They're clever in the way that they get a little bit, and so it's not just your tax bracket; it's all the other things that go into that, and property taxes too, based on your state.
Yeah, that's true. So we are talking about some lifestyle changes, and we're not talking about frugality, extreme frugality.
Yeah.
You've got to enjoy life. We're only here once, okay? And and trust me, we understand that. We're not here to say just save, stop going on vacation, stop buying RVs, stop doing it, sell your cars, buy something cheap. We're not here to say that. We want to support you in your lifestyle change, but maybe we can offer some suggestions and just think about how a little bit now can truly make a big difference later on.
A couple really big ones that come to mind right away are, if you're not maxing out your investment and your investments, like your 401k, your IRAs, if you're not doing that first, Dave Ramsey is going to be mad at me when I say this. Don't pay off the house early. Yeah. That's something to consider. It's not specific investment advice. However, if we're not funding, you can't finance retirement.
Right. It's true.
And so, switching.
You can't always finance your house.
Yeah. Let's say you've got $2,000 a month to allocate somewhere. Okay. If you're not maxing out your 401k, that's probably where I would be starting, or your HSA first for sure. Right. Because one, it's going to reduce your taxes. So you'll end up having, $2,200, $2,300 a month to invest before you are paying extra down, especially if you have a really low interest rate on your mortgage. And I get it. You want to have the house paid off, but if you have a paid off house and a bunch of expenses, then we have problems.
Well, and talking about the house, sometimes at the age of 58, you're now an empty nester. Mm-hmm. The kids are gone. You've raised the kids in the house. Yes, there's a lot of sentimental value there, but honestly, do you need all of that house? Do you need 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square feet? Downsizing may not be cheaper, because now new smaller houses may be the same price as your house, but the expenses of that house, being able to hire someone to come in and mow and clean it and do things, will be less expensive, and you will more than likely save money by downsizing.
And $1,000 a month adds up, especially when you're contributing to other things. And so little things like that can make a big difference. And what's really important here is creating an order of operations for your cash flow. What needs to be funded first? What needs to be funded second? And most folks, their plan is just to do whatever they feel. They go with their gut. Yeah. That's not always optimal. So understanding your expense optimization is critical. But maximizing your income sources and preparing for challenges there really creates more retirement security than just reducing your expenses.
How do we optimize income sources at this point?
So there's a couple things that we can do. And we've talked about a little bit of this so far. One, we need to list out all of your income sources. If you have a side hustle, rental real estate, that kind of thing, we need to understand that. But two, what we need to think about is, how much do you need to take to fund the rest of your retirement? Yep. We need a starting point of where are you, and are you able to accomplish your goals if you don't contribute anymore based on reasonable assumptions? And if not, if there's a shortfall, how are we going to fill that gap? That's the first thing that we've got to do. Okay. And it may surprise you. You may be closer than you think. But by doing that, and by allocating the first money towards making sure that we get that right, the rest of it we can be more flexible with. We can do things like pay off the house or pay off the car, or replace things. I'm a big fan of zero-based budgeting. We cover your necessary saving and investing first, and the rest you can spend and not worry about. Most people just do it backwards. They invest whatever's left over, and then they end up not investing enough, and then we have a problem.
Sure.
So the other thing about income optimization is this is the right time to start talking about when you're going to take Social Security and how are you going to create income in retirement. And we're getting a lot of questions nowadays, a lot more than I used to, about annuities. And I don't know if that's because more people are promoting them or there's better education. Annuities are a potential source of income in retirement, just like dividends, just like mutual fund distributions, just like real estate. And so it's a tool. We don't want everything in one basket, but we want to understand them. And so there are situations where using a portion of your assets in an annuity that's designed to create income, as long as the expenses are low and it's with a good company, this can be a great way to solve sequence of returns risk and some of the concerns there. So again, I'm not making any recommendations here, but if that's something that you're evaluating, let's have a conversation about it, because one, there's great companies and there's not great companies, and
Sure.
we want to make sure we get that right. However, that can be a way to accelerate your retirement. If you have certainty about what your income is going to be and it's going to cover your expenses, that's a great tool, So figuring out what your retirement income strategy really is going to be, it's a great time to start.
There's a whole lot of comfort knowing my basic expenses are paid for.
It's true. And what's interesting is some of our higher net worth clients love annuities for that purpose. Okay. Yes, they could make more money in other strategies, but they feel comfortable spending their money because they know it's going to keep coming in. It's counterintuitive, but the people that are the happiest have the highest pensions and the highest guaranteed income. And so we need to at least explore those options. So now that you've seen some of these optimization strategies, let's look at how you can implement them to transform your $750K into lasting retirement security. So we're going to do a rapid fire action plan here. Okay. Now, these are the questions you need to ask and answer. We can't answer them for you. We don't know enough about your personal situation. Okay. At least not at this point. Right. So the first thing is, what immediate questions should you be asking, to optimize your retirement trajectory
This month?
Yeah. Like right now, what
Yes.
should you be doing? How much can you contribute? And should you start that immediately? This is the question.
If you don't know what catch-up contributions are, learn what they are, because they can make a huge difference.
And it depends on the type of plan that you have. So there's some rules, but we can help you to talk about that. And then the next question is, should you rebalance your investments? Mm-hmm. It depends. Depends on where you're at now and where you need to be. But this is a great opportunity to do it while you're making additional contributions.
Yeah. And how do you create a timeline for major financial decisions? And my point here is, you've never done this before. Okay. Yeah. You've never gone through retirement before. We do it all day, every day. And so you have to know what those decision points are. And if you don't, we can help you figure those out.
And I think, to the point earlier about, when you can make these decisions without being pressured for time, that's better. We want to have a sense of this by the time you're 59 or 60, so that, we're comfortable with.
You need a team. Yeah. Okay. It's you plus your team help you figure this out and know exactly what to do.
And your core team needs to be, your financial planner, your tax professional, and your estate planning attorney. Mm-hmm. At a bare minimum, these need to be the core team. Yeah. And if you don't have those, you can sit in some of those seats. That's fine, but you just got to make sure you're not missing anything.
You need a realistic retirement timeline and backup plans, because stuff happens. Okay. Things happen. Emergencies occur.
You don't know everything that's going to happen, right? Yep. The thing is, this is why we have to stress test. I mean, we can do napkin math, and 4% on $1 million is $40,000 a year, plus 20 for Social Security. We got 60. We're good to go. Yeah, but what the napkin math doesn't take into account is all the other little details.
Inflation.
You get laid off early, inflation, the portfolio doesn't perform, all of those different things. We've got a stress test. What if you have a health concern early? What if you have a period where you've got to take care of a loved one, and that's an extra $3,000 a month for 5 years? Mm-hmm. That's a different type of stress on your plan. What if a market correction happens early? What if, we've got to test these scenarios. Yeah. And if we don't, it might work out. But if we test them and that we've worked through them, you'll be more comfortable moving into retirement.
Yeah. And we truly want to know what your goals are, okay? Yes, we're financial advisors. We want you to save and do things, but we also realize that you have goals. There are things, retirement may not be your number one goal. You may want to, whatever you want to do, we understand that. And it's our job to help you with your goals, not for us to tell you what to do. You tell us what you want, and we'll try our best to wave our magic wand and make it happen.
It's all about defining your goals and figuring out the way to fund them. Financial planning ultimately is that simple. Now, there's a whole mess of other things that are involved with it, and so that's where we have to work together. I think the other thing to think about is how often should we review and adjust the strategy. Sometimes folks do this too much in the wrong way. So in my opinion, we need to create a baseline strategy and we need to adjust it over time. Okay. Now that doesn't mean we're changing the portfolio all the time.
Sure.
When people hear adjust the strategy, it means typically advisors, what they mean is we're going to move your assets around and they're going to sell you a bunch of different stuff. That's not what we're talking about. Your retirement portfolio is like a bar of soap. The more you touch it, the more it goes away. Look, it's easy to remember. Okay,
It's true.
It's I try to give you these little things that are easy to remember. I know I'm silly, but this is helpful. Okay, and so the strategy is not how often you change your investments. The strategy is what's the plan to turn on Social Security? What's the plan to take income? How are we going to pivot? We need a baseline with that, and then we make adjustments along the way. Not every 6 weeks we're changing our investments because the guy called us and told us this new thing is that's dangerous. Yeah. So now that you understand some of the critical moves required, now that you've saved $750,000 at 58, you can take immediate action to transform this foundation into lasting retirement security. Now, if you want help creating your personalized action plan for maximizing your $750K retirement foundation, click the link in the description below. We'll send you a personalized video analyzing your specific situation and showing you exactly how to optimize your path to retirement security. And we look forward to seeing you in the next video.
All right.